Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is lecture B of week number 10, and today we are going to talk about the use of faults for earthquake hazards assessment. In the previous lecture, we talked about we talked about the predictive relationships, and those relationships are very important to find out the future occurrence of an earthquake in any area and what type of strong ground motion will be produced because of that particular earthquake at your site of interest. All right, so if you see the title of your subject, that is related to earthquake seismology and risk assessment. So far we have talked about earthquake seismology. And what was included in earthquake seismology? It was all about the theoretical background of earthquake happening, causes of an earthquake, different components of an earthquake, and then we talked about the strong ground motion and the different parameters those are used to find out the strong ground motion. And then we talked about the predictive relationships and different spectra. So that is all related to earthquake seismology. And now based on that particular knowledge, we are now going to perform the risk assessment because the studying of all those facts related to earthquake is actually to perform the risk assessment. That is actually the base of performing the risk assessment. And what is risk assessment? Risk assessment is actually the estimation of the hazard that is associated with a particular earthquake source in a particular area, right? So this is very important thing, and this is actually the application, you can say, of earthquake seismology, the risk assessment. And how we perform the risk assessment, we need to know the different parameters. Those are used to perform the risk assessment, and then we have some methodologies. Those need the history of the earthquake happening in that particular area, and then the activeness or the fault activity of that particular area, historical seismicity and instrumental seismicity, and all kind of records. Those are important for the risk assessment. All right, so why we perform the risk assessment? Definitely, earthquake risk assessment designates the losses that may be occurred, right? May be expected to occur in a particular area. So the basis for estimating earthquake risk is a quantitative evaluation of seismic hazard. Quantitative evaluation of seismic hazard. ठीक है? So how we perform it? How we get the quantitative evaluation of seismic hazard? We need to go in the historical seismicity of that particular area, the geology of active faults, then the crustal deformation rates. It means the activeness of the plate boundaries, right? And spatial gradients. So this kind of information is required to perform the quantitative evaluation of seismic hazard in a particular area, right? So faults are very important because faults are directly associated with a number of seismic activities all over the world, and these faults are definitely linked with the movement of the plates. So, in San Francisco, this San Andreas Fault is there, and if you talk about the northern Pakistan, there is main boundary thrust fault, main mantle thrust fault, main Karakoram thrust fault, and main frontal thrust fault. So these are abbreviated as MBT. That is the main boundary thrust fault. Then we got M MT, main mantle thrust fault. Then we have MKT, main Karakum thrust fault, and then we have MFT, main frontal thrust fault. Similarly, we have Chaman fault. So these are the major faults those govern the seismicity of Pakistan, right? So first of all, we need to understand how we can use the faults in the risk assessment, and then we will talk about the tectonic setup of Pakistan as well in upcoming lecture. Maybe in the lab, I need to decide it for that. All right, so there are different components. Those are very important to perform the seismic hazard analysis or the risk assessment. And what kind of components of the faults? Like we need to know the rupture length L, and then displacement of the fault, and then another is the area of the fault plane. These are the geometrical aspects of faults. Those are need to be investigated in a particular area with respect to all of the faults. Like these faults, we need to quantify the hazard by knowing the what is the rupture length, what is the displacement so far produced along a fault, and what is the area of rupture plane. So first of all, we talk about the length of surface rupture. Length of surface rupture is like, let's suppose this is actually the total length of the fault, right? And we can trace it on the surface, and it is like you can say 100 kilometer, 200 kilometer, maybe thousands of kilometers. It's possible for different faults. Like San Andreas fault is around 2200 kilometer total rupture length. So as the first important thing you need to know is that greater the magnitude of the earthquake, greater will be the rupture length. Greater the magnitude of the earthquake, greater will be the displacement produced along the fault, and greater the magnitude of an earthquake, greater will be the area activated during the fault, during the earthquake happening, right? So so we need to now quantify these things. I mean, theoretical background is okay. We know this should happen if the magnitude is greater, but all these things need to be quantified. So how you can define the length of the surface rupture? Distance between the ends of the continuous or nearly continuous breaks that formed at the surface in the listed earthquakes, like this. This is the first end, and this is the second end. And these maybe these I mean fault surface rupture may be not visible at some location, like maybe there is a dotted line not visible, and then again it is continuous. Maybe it is not visible over here because of the surface weathering and geology, but it apparently shows that this is one fault that is continuous, right? So rupture length we need to define like that. All right. So then we have fault displacement. Fault displacement is very important. Displacement means if there are 2 points, and those were over here, I mean before the movement. This is fault, and let's suppose movement taken place, and you see that if the movement is there, then what happens? This point displaced over here, right? And these were together before the movement. So it means this is actually the fault displacement represented by a capital D, right? So fault displacement is measured in inches, feet, or in meters. It cannot be in kilometers. It's not like that if earthquake is happened and some portion of your house is moved 1 kilometer away from the current location. So it's not gonna do like that. I mean, for such kind of movement, we need huge seismic energy. So that is so far it's not possible. In maximum fault displacement is in meters, like 5 meter, 10 meter is possible during an earthquake happening, but it's not like that. It will be in kilometers. Yes, rupture length will be in kilometers. It means the fault is getting activated along a significant length that may be in kilometers, but the movement or the displacement will be in meters or feet. I mean, it will be small. Then we also need to, and that displacement may be horizontal, may be vertical, right? So whenever there is an earthquake, we need to know that how much displacement taken place and how much fault length is activated. It is, let's suppose if we have a rupture length of 1,000 kilometer of a fault, and this is from the previous history. We map that a fault rupture length is 1,000 kilometer, but during an earthquake it is not sometimes possible to activate all of the rupture length of a fault during an earthquake, right? Some portion is activated, like if earthquake is happen over here, then maybe this much portion is activated, and that might be of 200 kilometer, right? Because the energy is not capable enough to activate this much portion, right? So so you just remember, if earthquake trigger over here, maybe this much portion will be activated, right? So for a single earthquake, it is not possible to reactivate all of the rupture length. This is very unlikely, right? So the rupture length may be of 100 kilometer, 150 kilometer, 200 or 250 kilometers. So this is like that. But that for 200 kilometer, we still need a bigger earthquake to happen. So the displacement may be horizontal or vertical. I mean, we know that there could be strike slip faults, there could be normal faulting, there could be reverse faulting, but strike slip and reverse faulting is more common for an earthquake happening. All right. So then we have then this fault area we will talk about later as well. We will talk about the different relationships. Those are made based on the known seismicity of a particular area. So then we need to know the map patterns, how the maps look on the surface map. You know, so this is actually the surface expression of the faults. So we can divide the map patterns into following two categories. First is the single narrow main breaks. Single narrow main breaks, let's suppose this is the single and narrow main break. This is the fault, right? And complex features. Complex features mean, I mean, we have like zones like that. Whenever there is a break, there will be some sort of smaller breaks. Those are associated with that fault as well. So that could be actually a fault zone. It will not be a line, right? So there will be a kind of zone, main fault zone. It may be of 1 kilometer width, maybe of 2 kilometer or something like that. So then we have subsidiary faults. One are the main fault, and another is the subsidiary fault. Subsidiary faults have further two types. These are very important concepts: branch faults and then secondary faults. I will share with you the handout from where I have taken this text, and there are some figures to explain those things. I have added some of the figures in this presentation as well. So branch faults and secondary faults, right? Branch means just like a tree. If you just recall the structure of a tree, there is a main stem. This is a kind of main stem, and then we have some of the branches associated with that, right? Like that. If it were a branch of, if it were a stem of the tree, you see that we might be having branches like that. Those are directly connected, right? Branches are directly connected to the stem. So similarly, the faults, smaller faults, those are directly associated with the larger faults or bigger faults are called as branch faults, right? और ये subsidiary faults की एक type है, क्योंकि जब एक फॉल्ट रप्चर लेंथ या बड़ा फॉल्ट एक्टिवेट होता है तो उसमें यही होता है कि साइड पे भी फ्रैक्चर्स इंड्यूस होते हैं। फॉल्ट उसकी मेन लेंथ के अलॉन्ग भी छोटे छोटे, जिससे छोटे छोटे फॉल्ट जिसे हम कहते हैं वो बनते हैं। अगर वो डायरेक्टली कनेक्टेड है with the main fault, then those are called as branch faults, and that is the type of subsidiary faults, right? Then we have secondary faults, right? क्या है secondary faults? Secondary faults वो होते हैं जो apparently associated नहीं होते किसके साथ, मेन फॉल्ट के साथ, उसका डायरेक्ट कनेक्शन नजर नहीं आता। तो अब देखिए यहाँ पे इसका कनेक्शन नजर नहीं आ रहा, तो ये वाले जो फॉल्ट्स हैं दीज विल बी कॉल्ड एज सेकेंडरी फॉल्ट्स। सेकेंडरी फॉल्ट्स जो हैं वो those are also appeared because of the movement along the main fault। मेन फॉल्ट के लॉन्ग जो मूवमेंट होती है उसकी वजह से सब जो सेकेंडरी फॉल्ट्स भी बनते हैं, लेकिन उसका डायरेक्ट सरफेस के ऊपर जो है वो लिंक नहीं होता उन फॉल्ट्स के लॉन्ग। तो वो फॉल्ट्स कैसे प्रोड्यूस हो गए, डेफिनेटली वो एक मेन किसी मूवमेंट की वजह से ही हुए ना, तो ये सेकेंडरी फॉल्ट्स प्रोड्यूस होते हैं। ये भी मेन फॉल्ट के लॉन्ग मूवमेंट होती है तो सेकेंडरी फॉल्ट्स भी बनते हैं जो कि डायरेक्टली कनेक्शन में नहीं होते मेन फॉल्ट के साथ। सो दीज आर actually the three type of faults: one is the main fault, another is the branch fault, and then the secondary faults। लेकिन broader category में जो subsidiary faults है उसकी ये दोनों types हैं, branch faults and secondary faults। So this is the how you can understand, this is the surface expression: main fault, bigger length, bigger rupture, right? Then the branch faults, like these are the branch faults. You see that type 2. These are the type 2 faults. Type 1 is the main fault. Then you have type 3 faults. Type 3 faults are the secondary faults, right? Both of these two types are, further subdivision of subsidiary faults, right? This is just we talked about. So this is how we just understood the surface expression of the faults. Now here is the quantitative analysis of the movement that is taken place, this length of surface rupture of the subsidiary faults and main faults, how big could be the subsidiary faults and how big could be the main fault. And apparently the main fault should have the maximum rupture length, and then the subsidiary faults will be having the surface rupture length of smaller amount, right? Smaller value. So over here you see that these are all the historical events. You see that these are all the historical events, and where the length of rupture was activated along a main fault, and then how much rupture length was activated in the along the subsidiary fault, like this. You see that this is San Andreas, California earthquake 1906, 8.3, right? And there is Owens Valley, California earthquake 8.3 again, right? And then we have other earthquakes. So you see that the bigger, you see how much big was the rupture length that was activated during that particular earthquake. It was around 150 kilometer, right? Nearly 150 kilometer. And these subsidiary faults, they have the movement probably 5-6 kilometers. So this is very evident that if an earthquake is triggered along a main fault, definitely the major portion of that rupture length will be activated along that particular fault due to a bigger earthquake, and then there will be smaller rupture length activated along the subsidiary faults. Subsidiary faults may be secondary faults or the branch faults, right? So you already you see that this is almost everywhere it is true. Main rupture length will be more, and the subsidiary rupture length will be smaller. There are rare events like this one over here. You have almost both of the uh, faults have a kind of similar rupture length. So this could be like that. I mean, this could be the branch fault like that, you know, and this could be the bigger fault, and you see that this much rupture length is activated along main fault, and similarly a nearly equal rupture length along the branch fault. So but this is rare. So the main concept over here is there will be greater rupture length along the main fault and smaller will be along the subsidiary fault. All right, so this is another graph that is showing the fault displacement as related to the distance from the main fault. I mean, how much displacement is produced along the main fault, and then how much displacement is produced along the subsidiary faults. So over here, this is actually the displacement produced along the main faults, then the you can say the branch faults and secondary faults as a function of the distance from the main fault. Like this is the main fault, and this is actually a zone, right? So main fault has a kind of a zero distance. You know that from from that zone. Then there will be secondary faults. There will be you can say branch faults and then subsidiary faults, right? So here is the quantification of the results. You see these are actually the main events. All type of faults are there. You see these are all the main events. Those are very near to the main zone of the fault. Is it clear? So they have bigger displacement. You see that the displacement is up to 20 feet, or maybe more than that, up to 26, 27 feet, right? So this is along the main fault displacement is produced. Then you see there is another type that is called as branch fault. If you see that along the branch fault, these are the event. If you check, these are the event like that, and then these are the events, right? And some of the events are here, and some of them are mixed over here. So here is the distance. Distance is little low. Distance is small. I mean, let's suppose if here the distance is 30 kilometer, 30 28 feet, then there is the distance is around 4 feet or 5 feet, right? So this is a kind of logarithmic scale. So then we have secondary forms. This is a kind of educated guess. So you don't see that there is an exact relationship between the secondary faults and then the branch faults with the main fault, but overall you see that the branch faults have a kind of decreasing trends when it comes to the secondary faults. So secondary faults might have smaller, you can say the smaller displacements along the main fault, great along the subsidiary faults. So you need to understand this is the 32 event. So recognize these things by event. 32 event. So over here the 32 event is here. I mean, if you have 20 feet over here the length displacement, and over here it is the 1 feet displacement along the secondary faults, right? So the secondary faults may be of many types, like this is secondary fault, this is secondary fault, and this is the main fault. So you can have more secondary faults like that, right? So then we have like this is 25 number event. So you need to find out where is 25. 25 is this. So it has 5 feet move displacement, and over here it has around less than half feet. So over here we are getting the idea. There will be greater displacement along the main fault, and there will be smaller along the subsidiary faults, like the branch faults will be having little less displacement than the main fault, and then the secondary faults will be having even more smaller displacement against the as compared to the branch fault. So here you can find a relationship. 32 event is coming down here, and we have this much displacement, then we have this much displacement, then we have this much displacement. Over here the displacement is almost same for the branch fault and secondary fault, but over here if you compare that, branch fault has more displacement as compared to these events, right? These events. So are you getting the idea what we are talking about? I guess you should be okay with this explanation. So these are just the guesses, we are getting from the actual earthquake happening pattern. So how much will be the rupture length or the displacement? It also depends upon the material. It also depends upon the lithology, the geology of a particular area. But overall, here just we are talking about the trends. All right, so here the fault displacement in percentage of displacement along V. This is more representative. In the previous figure, we just talking about the apparent relationship between the rupture length, between the displacement along the main fault and the displacement along the branch faults or secondary faults. Over here, the fault displacement is in the percentage. I mean, let's suppose if the main fault is ruptured 28 feet, and how much bigger was the rupture along these secondary faults like this one, right? So we can find out the percentage. We can find out the percentage, right, of that displacement. So here you see that the overall displacement is getting reduced along the uh, secondary faults as compared to the branch faults. Branch faults, you see the events are over here, right? So overall, this is the relationship. Not very much representative, but still we can have an idea. Okay, then width of zones of faults. This is also very important thing. Width of zones of faults. How much could be the width of the fault zones? Fault zones, how you can do that? The maximum distance from the center line of the main zone of faulting to the outer edges of the main branch and secondary fault. Fault zone जो है वो width उसकी कैसे define करेंगे? एक तो ये कि main आपके पास fault zone है, ठीक है? ये fault zone जो है ये main जो है वो आपका इसके विड्थ 1-2 किलोमीटर तक हो सकती है। इसके बाद अगर आपके पास ब्रांच फॉल्ट्स हैं, फिर सेकेंडरी फॉल्ट्स हैं, राइट, सेकेंडरी फॉल्ट्स हैं, तो विड्थ को आप कैसे डिफाइन करेंगे? तो दिस इज एक्चुअली द सेंट्रल लाइन, ये, और उसके बाद उधर से ये है, ठीक है? ये आपके पास है मेन फॉल्ट जो है ना, आपके पास ओवरऑल फॉल्ट जोन जो है ना वो उसकी सरफेस एक्सप्रेशन मेन, एक मेन विड्थ होगी फॉल्ट के, दूसरा एक जो जोन है आपके पास वो इस तरीके से सेंट्रल लाइन से आप इसको डिफाइन करना है, ठीक है? So the maximum distance from the center line of the main zone of faulting to the outer edge of the main branch and secondary zones of faulting, it is called as width of fault zones. And sometimes it is very possible the surface ruptures can be absorbed in rock or soil or can die out in the rock and soil. It means, okay, let's suppose this is a fault surface rupture, and when there is a hard rock like that, over there is the hard rock, it can disappear and then appear again. Sometimes they can just go forever. Maybe they can go within the subsurface like that, and there is now no surface expression over here, right? So that is called as absorption of ruptures in rock and soil. So they can die out. All right, so this is another relationship. Distance from center line of main zone to outer edge of indicated zone. So that could be in miles, right? Main fault जो है वो, और उसके बाद आप ब्रांच फॉल्ट्स हैं और सेकेंडरी फॉल्ट्स हैं, तो उनके आपस में डिस्टेंसेस कितने हैं। लेट्स सपोज ये मेन फॉल्ट है, ये देखिए मेन फॉल्ट्स के इवेंट्स हैं। तो उसके बाद जो आपके पास बाकी जोन्स हैं उनकी क्या विड्थ है, उसके अकॉर्डिंगली यहाँ पे जो आपके पास रिलेशनशिप है उसका किसके साथ, अर्थक्वेक मैग्नीट्यूड के साथ, earthquake magnitude के साथ. So this is also very important thing. You can see that this is let's suppose this is 8 magnitude earthquake. So over here you can see that the fault zone is little bigger. You see number 3, number 3, then you have number 2, and then number 1. So for smaller earthquakes, you can see that the width of fault zoning is smaller. You see that, I mean, so over here it is bigger, up to 15 kilometer. All right. Then we have earthquake intensity near the fault and non-seismic fault. This is another important thing. Apparently, the earthquake intensity will be more near the faults, right, where the earthquake is triggered. So earthquake will be triggered along the fault, and epicenter will also be along the fault plane. So apparently, what will happen? There will be more intensity near the earthquake epicenter, and that is on the fault plane. And then there are some non-seismic faults. Non-seismic faults are those faults, those are just produced because of some geological event, but those do not have any recorded seismic activity, right? Maybe there is a fault like that, but there is no actually seismic activity associated with that in the past 500 years or 1000 years or 10,000 years. So in this way we need to define how much that particular fault is active. Like if it is not active in the known history, then we can say that it is a non-seismic fault, right? Generally smaller faults are like non-seismic faults, and they have smaller length as compared to the bigger events, and bigger events or bigger faults have the larger lengths, and those are active faults, right? So this is what it is. Talk about small faults, non-felt earthquakes, fault creep. So and then the faults with uncertain tectonic origin. I mean, if it is away from a tectonic plate, like 1,000 kilometer away, right? So it means that relate this fault with we cannot relate this fault with this plate boundary. So this is actually uncertain, having a certain origin related to the tectonic setting. Then we have now, based on all these things, now we can come up with some sort of equations based on the data, how we can formulate the equations. This is discussed in the upcoming slides, and where you see that the relation of fall displacement and length of surface rupture to earthquake magnitude, right? Rupture length and then displacement, how they are related to the magnitude. Apparently we know that greater the magnitude, greater will be the rupture length, greater the magnitude, greater will be the displacement. This is what we know, but we need to quantify these things. So over here you see that earthquake magnitude, and then we have maximum surface displacement along the main fault, right? So this is the logarithmic plot, and over here we have upper bound. This is upper bound and this is lower bound, because there is no kind of very precise straight line relationship. There will be some sort of educated guess over here. So you see that this is actually the main fault, along the main fault, main displacement. So magnitude is getting increased, the displacement is getting increased. You see that all of these events have greater displacement and magnitude is over here. You see that? So smaller displacement, magnitude is very small. Smaller earthquakes, magnitude is of the, amount of the earthquake, the displacement along the main fault will be small. So this is a kind of, you can say, the relationship that is directly proportional. Similarly, if you plot the same graph on the arithmetic plot, where we do not have any logarithmic plot, then the relationship is like that, right? It means this is not straight line, but we have an exponential growth of the growth in the increasing in the value of the displacement. You see that if this is the displacement because of number 6 magnitude fault, but if it is a number 8 magnitude, it will be huge. Like you see that it will be like 20 feet as compared to the 5 feet that is in the magnitude 6 earthquake. So it means there is a kind of exponential growth in magnitude, and we also know that this seismic energy is not a kind of same between the magnitude of 6, the rate of increase in seismic energy between the 6 magnitude earthquake and 7 magnitude earthquake will not be kind of linear. It will be exponential. The 7 magnitude earthquake will be 10 times more stronger. Its amplitude will be 10 times more than the magnitude of 6, and the energy will be increased, I guess, more than 25 or 28 times more than the 6 magnitude earthquake. So it means the increase in the energy is not linear. So this is the reason why the increase in the surface displacement along the main fault is not linear when you compare between the displacement produced during an earthquake of smaller magnitude and then the larger magnitude earthquake. All right. So this is another relationship, that is the length of surface structure. Previous was the displacement along the main fault. Now the length of surface structure along the main fault to the earthquake. Definitely there will be a kind of straight line relationship. Magnitude is getting increased, the rupture length is getting increased. You see that at 50 kilometer you see the relationship. It may go, it is starting from the 7 magnitude and then it goes all the way to 9, and then we have, if it is of greater, if you have 7, then this is the relationship. You see that. So this is actually, this straight line is drawn to in after including all of these events, surface rupture. So this is on the higher side, you can say. We can also have a line along the lower side as well, but the trend is, you can say, the increasing. If the magnitude is getting increased, you can see that the increase in the rupture length, right? So I guess you are getting my point. Similarly, you have a maximum surface displacement in fit, and then the relationship between the length of surface rupture and how much displacement. Greater the length of surface rupture, greater will be the displacement. So you see that if the rupture length is around 10, you see that, the displacement will be like that. If the rupture length is along, this is also logarithmic scale. You see that the displacement will be more. So this is all known history based on all of the known events. All right, so this is all about for today's lecture part B of week 10. And next time we will start the seismic hazard analysis, where we need to go through most of the content of that particular lecture will be from chapter number 4 of your textbook. All right, so that's all for today.